Welcome. This screencast will discuss the states of matter, specifically the three states of matter that occur naturally on Earth. The definition for states of matter is the physical forms in which all matter naturally exists on Earth, solid, liquid, and gas. This is also known as the phases of matter. So when a substance changes from one state or one phase to another, it's called a phase change. And the three common ones on Earth are solid, liquid, and gas. There's actually a fourth state of matter called plasma, but it only exists on Earth as lightning bolts, so it's really not common enough to bother with, at least at this point in our chemistry studies. It's a physical state of a substance, so it's a physical property. Each state can be described by the way it fills a container. Does it keep its volume in the container, and does it keep its shape when in the container, or does it take the shape of the container? On the atomic level, the physical difference between each state is how tightly packed the atoms are or how much freedom of movement the atoms have. Any substance can go from a solid to a liquid to a gas, or a gas to a liquid to a solid. So phase changes can happen for any substance. It's a matter of having the atoms packed more tightly or allowing the atoms more freedom of movement. Solids. Solids are a form of matter that has its own definite shape and volume. This means when you put a solid in a container, it will keep its own shape and it'll keep its volume. The atoms in a solid are packed tightly together, so solids don't change shape or volume very easily. They can't be compressed very much, if at all. And some solids tend to be more rigid or hard, like metals and concrete, while others are much softer. In fact, you might think, is this really a solid, such as clay, wax, jello, butter? The images below show a solid containing just one kind of an atom, so that would be some kind of pure element, and a solid containing two kinds of atoms, perhaps NaCl or table salt. Liquids are defined as a form of matter that flows, has constant volume, and takes the shape of its container. So, like a liquid, a solid keeps the same volume over time, but unlike a solid, a liquid does not have its own shape. Liquids have atoms that are further apart. They're not held quite as tightly or rigidly in place, so they've got some movement. So liquids don't change volume easily, but they do change shape depending upon the container. They have room to move or flow by each other, so that allows them to take on the shape of whatever container they're in. Liquids usually can't be compressed very much either, but they do expand fairly easily with heat. And water is by far the most common liquid around us. In fact, many liquids around you have water as their base. It's water with other things added to it. Gases. Gases are a form of matter that flows to conform to the shape of its container and fills the entire volume of its container. So what does that mean? It means a gas, like a liquid, takes on the shape of the container it's in, but it also will take on the volume of the container. So if you filled up a glass half full with milk, the milk's not going to expand to take up the whole glass. But if you were filling up a container with a gas, the gas will expand to take up the shape and volume of the entire container. And in fact, you have to have a closed container or you're not going to be able to hold on to that gas. So gases contain atoms that are extremely far apart and completely free to move. They're not held in place by each other whatsoever. So gases change both shape and volume easily. Gases flow easily because there's so much empty space between the atoms. In fact, when we use the word fluid, we're referring to both liquids and gases. Gases can be compressed a lot because there's a lot of space between them. We can decrease that space and compress them. And they change volume quickly with changes in temperature. Nitrogen and oxygen, which make up 99.9% of the air around you, are by far the most common gases around us. So to sum up, if you look at these three diagrams, you see how the spacing and the movement varies in the three states of matter. Solids, particles are close together, there's little room to move, they're basically just vibrating in shape, so they keep their shape and their volume. Liquids, particles aren't as tightly packed as a solid, so they have some room to move or flow past each other, so they keep their volume but not their shape. And gases do not keep their shape or volume. The particles are far apart, free to move anywhere they want. And a quick side note, you may have heard the word vapor. Vapor is just a fancy word for a liquid, a substance that's usually a liquid at room temperature that has become a gas. So like when you boil water, you have water vapor in the air. That's probably the most common example of where you hear it. But vapors are gases. It's something in the gas state. But like I said, normally it's a liquid at room temperature, and for whatever reason, it has become a gas.